The silver Toyota Camry slowed to a stop at the intersection of Maple and 4th. I sank lower in the driver's seat of my rental, 2 cars back, heart pounding against my ribs. My husband's right blinker flashed 3 times before he turned, away from the interstate that would take him to his parents' house in Greenville. Away from the truth he'd been feeding me for 3 years. Follow him. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I navigated the same turn, maintaining my distance. The suburbs of West Canton were unfamiliar territory. Neat rows of newer homes with manicured lawns stretched in all directions, a stark contrast to our downtown apartment. A child's bicycle lay abandoned on one driveway. A sprinkler system misted an emerald lawn across the street, all so painfully normal. Elliott's car glided into a driveway 6 houses down on the right, a modest 2-story with cream siding and navy shutters. A basketball hoop stood sentinel over the garage, the kind of home I'd always imagined us having someday. My throat tightened as I pulled to the curb half a block away, killing the engine. Elliott stepped out of his car, straightened his collar in the side mirror, a nervous habit I'd teased him about countless times, and retrieved a large gift bag from the trunk. Gold with white tissue paper, similar to the one I'd wrapped his birthday present in last month. The moment stretched like taffy as I watched him approach the front door, shoulders squared with purpose. A door he didn't need to knock on. A door he had a key for, which he used before disappearing inside. The house swallowed him whole. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. I sat frozen, my world crumbling silently around me. Then the front door opened again. Elliott emerged with a young boy, maybe 5 or 6, hoisted onto his shoulders. The child's laughter carried across the quiet street, his small hands gripping my husband's forehead for balance. Behind them came a woman, petite, dark-haired, beautiful in an effortless way. She carried a small girl, no more than 2, on her hip. The woman leaned forward, planted a kiss on Elliott's cheek, and said something that made him throw his head back in laughter. I recognized that laugh. I'd fallen in love with that laugh. The little girl squirmed and reached for Elliott, calling out a single word that shattered what remained of my heart. "Daddy!" Elliott took her in his arms, spinning her around while the boy on his shoulders squealed with delight. A perfect family portrait. Except I wasn't in it. 7 years earlier, I'd been racing through the concourse at O'Hare, lugging a carry-on that seemed determined to topple me with each step. My flight to Denver had been delayed twice, and the client meeting I was heading to had already been rescheduled once. Missing it wasn't an option. "Final boarding call for Flight 2476 to Denver," the announcement blared overhead. I broke into a full sprint, my heels clicking dangerously on the polished floor. The coffee I'd grabbed after clearing security sloshed over the rim of its cup, splashing across the pristine white shirt of a man walking in the opposite direction. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," I gasped, mortified. He looked down at the spreading brown stain, then back at me. Instead of anger, his eyes, a striking hazel, crinkled with amusement. "Well," he said, dabbing ineffectively at his shirt with a napkin, "that's one way to make an impression." "I really am sorry. I'm about to miss my flight and—" "Denver?" he asked, glancing at my boarding pass. I nodded. "Gate 22? Me too." He gestured toward the gate just visible down the corridor. "And they're still boarding. Breathe." His calm was contagious. I felt my shoulders relax slightly. "I'm Elliott," he said, extending his hand. "Maren," I replied, shifting my bag to shake it. We boarded together, and by some stroke of cosmic intervention, or airline algorithm, our seats were across the aisle from each other. When the flight attendant came by with drinks, Elliott ordered 2 coffees. "Replacement for the one you're wearing?" I offered. "No," he said, handing one to me. "Replacement for the one you sacrificed in your Olympic-worthy sprint." By the time we landed in Denver, I had his number in my phone and butterflies in my stomach. 2 days later, we met for dinner at a small Italian place near my hotel before I flew back to Chicago. "So what brought you to Denver?" I asked over pasta. "Family business," Elliott replied. "My parents own a small furniture manufacturing company. I help manage the East Coast clients, but occasionally they need me to check on things at the main facility. Your parents live in Denver? No, Greenville. Small town south of here. He twirled spaghetti around his fork. What about your family? I told him about growing up in Chicago with my mom after my dad left when I was 4. How I'd put myself through college working 2 jobs. How I'd just made junior partner at my marketing firm. Impressive, he said. And unlike most men I'd dated, he seemed genuinely impressed, not intimidated. Not as impressive as running a family business, I countered. Trust me, it's less glamorous than it sounds. Lots of travel, lots of pressure. A shadow crossed his face. Family expectations can be complicated. I nodded, though I couldn't really relate. My mother had passed away during my senior year of college. There had been no expectations to meet, only my own. Anyway, he brightened. I'm actually based in Chicago, too. Lincoln Park area. My heart skipped. I'm in Bucktown. Practically neighbors, he said with a smile that made the rest of the restaurant fade away. 3 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, he proposed on the shore of Lake Michigan as the sun set behind the Chicago skyline. Our wedding was small, just a few of my friends and colleagues, and Elliott's parents, who I met for the first time at the rehearsal dinner. Richard and Helen Barnes were polished, reserved people who regarded me with cordial detachment. They didn't stay for the gift opening the day after the wedding, citing a long drive back to Greenville. They're old school, Elliott explained later. Takes them time to warm up to people. Don't take it personally. I tried not to. Our first year of marriage was a whirlwind of work and settling into our new routine. Elliott traveled frequently for his family's business, sometimes gone for days at a stretch. I threw myself into my work, taking on new clients and longer hours. When we were together, though, it was magic. Elliott had a way of making me feel centered, grounded in a way I'd never experienced before. He cooked elaborate meals, planned thoughtful date nights, remembered every anniversary and birthday with perfect, meaningful gifts. I don't deserve you, I told him once. Half joking, he kissed me deeply in response. You deserve everything, Maren. The cracks began to appear in our second year of marriage. Elliott's trips to see his parents became more frequent. Always on weekends, always with vague explanations about his father's health concerns or business emergencies. Always with an insistence that I didn't need to come along. It's just going to be hours at the hospital, he'd say. Or, you'd be bored sitting around while Dad and I go over inventory reports. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I had my own work to focus on anyway. Then came the calls he'd take in another room. The texts he'd shield from view. The way he'd sometimes arrive home from a business dinner, smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume. Who's Lydia? I asked one night, after a text notification from that name flashed on his phone. New client, he said without hesitation. Furniture for her startup's office. I nodded, ignoring the twist in my gut. Later that night, I scrolled through his contact list while he showered. No, Lydia. Still, I pushed my suspicions aside. Elliott wasn't like my father. He wouldn't just leave. He loved me. I was sure of it, until 3 weeks ago when I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A children's bookstore in West Canton, a suburb we never visited. Dated on a weekend, he was supposedly in Greenville with his parents. Kids' books for Richard, he'd explained when I asked. Dad's got a thing for first editions of the books he read as a child. Early onset nostalgia or something, it was plausible. Almost convincing, but it cracked the foundation enough for me to start digging. I called his parents' landline the next time he was supposedly visiting them. Hello? Barnes residence, his mother answered. Hi, Helen, it's Maren, I said brightly. Is Elliott there? His phone's going straight to voicemail. A pause. Too long? Oh, Maren. No, Elliott isn't here this weekend. My blood turned to ice. He's not? That's strange. He left this morning to visit you. Another pause. Perhaps he meant next weekend? Richard and I are actually in Florida right now, visiting my sister. Of course, I managed. My mistake. Enjoy your trip, I hung up, my hands shaking. The lies crystallized in my mind, sharp-edged and dangerous. The following weekend, when Elliott announced another trip to see his parents, I nodded and kissed him goodbye. Then I rented a car, waited 30 minutes, and followed him. I sat in my rental car on Maple Street, watching the family, his family, pile into Elliott's Toyota. The boy climbed into the back seat, followed by the woman with the little girl. They were laughing about something, these strangers who shared my husband. My phone buzzed in my lap. Elliott. Arrived at Mom and Dad's. Dad's having a good day. Miss you. A sob caught in my throat as I stared at the message. The audacity. The casual cruelty of it. I waited until Elliott's car disappeared around the corner before approaching the house. I needed evidence. Needed to see with my own eyes the full extent of his betrayal. The side gate to the backyard was unlocked. A playset stood in one corner of the fenced yard. Swing set, slide, sandbox. A child's paradise. Next to it, a stone patio with a grill and outdoor furniture. Signs of life, of family gatherings, of a whole existence I knew nothing about. Through the back window, I could see into the kitchen. Drawings magnetized to the refrigerator. A height chart on the wall by the doorway. Jackson and Lily, the names written in Elliott's unmistakable handwriting, with dates and measurements going back years. Years. I circled to the front of the house, tried the door. Locked. But the decorative rock in the flower bed, the one that looked exactly like the spare key hiding place at Elliott's parents' home, held a key that fit perfectly. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and laundry detergent. The same detergent we used. Photos lined the entryway. Elliott and the dark-haired woman on their wedding day. Elliott holding a newborn in a hospital room. Family portraits at Christmas, at the beach, at Disneyland. The dates on the Christmas ornaments in one photo, 2018. 2 years before I'd met him. Before he'd become my Elliott, my legs gave out, and I sank to the floor of this stranger's house. No, not a stranger. Lydia. The name was everywhere. On mail on the entry table, on a coffee mug in the kitchen, embroidered on a throw pillow on the couch. Lydia Barnes. Elliott's wife, just like Maren Barnes, Elliott's other wife. In a daze, I moved through the house, absorbing details like body blows. Jackson's room, dinosaurs and superheroes, baseball trophies, a photo of Elliott teaching him to fish. Lily's nursery, pink and gray, stuffed animals, tiny clothes in the dresser drawers. The master bedroom, their bed covered with the same white duvet cover Elliott had told me was out of stock when I wanted to buy it for our apartment. His clothes in the closet. Identical black sweater to the one in our closet at home. His razor on the bathroom counter. His reading glasses on the nightstand. Beside the bed stood a small bookshelf. I ran my fingers along the spines. Parenting books, novels, photo albums. I pulled one out. The Barnes family, written in Lydia's looping handwriting on the cover. Inside, the full timeline of deception unfolded. Elliott and Lydia's wedding 7 years ago. Jackson's birth 5 years ago. Their move to this house 4 years ago. Lily's birth 2 years ago. And there, on the last page, a photo from just last month. Elliott's birthday celebration. The gold gift bag I'd seen him carrying today sitting on the table beside a homemade cake with "Happy Birthday, Daddy," written in blue icing. My birthday gift to him, an expensive watch, had been opened that morning in our apartment before he left for work. He'd been wearing it in this photo, surrounded by his other family, opening his other birthday gifts. In the back of the album, tucked between pages, I found a folded document. A life insurance policy. Elliott had made Lydia the beneficiary of a $500,000 policy, double what he'd made me the beneficiary for in ours. Something else caught my eye. His business trips. The ones that took him away from both families. Mapped out in Lydia's day planner on her desk. Denver, Boston, Atlanta, all marked with hearts, a third life, or just escapes from the exhaustion of maintaining 2 separate existences. I heard a car door slam outside. They were back. I scrambled to return everything to its place, slipping out the back door and through the gate just as I heard the front door open. Children's voices spilling into the house. Their house. Their life. I made it back to my rental car, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the key. I sat there gasping for breath as the full weight of reality crushed down on me. My marriage was a lie. My husband was a lie. My entire life for the past 3 years had been constructed on a foundation of meticulously crafted deception. I drove back to our apartment, what I'd thought was our home, in a fog of rage and grief. By the time I pulled into the parking garage, a cold clarity had settled over me. I knew what I had to do. I spent Sunday preparing, gathering documents, taking photos of Elliott's things in our apartment, making copies of our marriage certificate, joint bank statements, tax returns, anything that proved our life together. Then I did the same with what I'd seen at the house on Maple Street. The photos I'd quickly snapped on my phone, the address, the names of his children. Monday morning, I called in sick to work, spent hours in front of my laptop, following digital breadcrumbs. LinkedIn confirmed that Lydia Barnes was a pediatric nurse at West Canton Medical Center. Property records showed the house on Maple Street was jointly owned by Elliott and Lydia Barnes, purchased 4 years ago. Marriage records showed they'd wed 7 years ago, in Denver, the city where we'd met, where he'd claimed to be on family business. By the time Elliott texted that he was on his way home Monday evening, I was ready. I sat at our dining table, the evidence arranged neatly before me, when his key turned in the lock. "Hey, beautiful," he called, the familiar greeting twisting like a knife in my chest. "Something smells amazing." I'd prepared his favorite meal, roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, haricots verts, the same meal he'd made the night he proposed. Elliott rounded the corner into the dining room, stopped short when he saw my face. His eyes flicked to the papers on the table, then back to me. A brief flash of what? Fear, calculation? Crossed his features before his expression softened into concern. "What's wrong? Did something happen at work?" So smooth, so practiced. I wondered how many times he'd lied to Lydia's face with the same seamless delivery. "Sit down, Elliott." He hesitated, then took the seat across from me. I poured him a glass of the Cabernet he loved, pushed it toward him silently. "You're scaring me, Maren." I met his eyes. "How's your dad feeling?" Relief flooded his face. "Better, actually. The new medication seems to be helping." "That's wonderful news," I said. "And your mom? How's Florida this time of year?" The blood drained from his face. "Your mother mentioned she was visiting her sister there when I called the house on Saturday," I continued, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "Imagine my surprise, since you were supposedly visiting them in Greenville." Elliott's fingers tightened around the stem of his wine glass. "I can explain. Can you explain Jackson and Lily too?" I slid the photo I'd taken of their family portrait across the table. "Can you explain Lydia? Your house on Maple Street? Your other family?" He stared at the photo, all pretense evaporating. When he looked up, his eyes were those of a stranger. "How long have you known?" he asked, voice hollow. "Does it matter? How long have you been living this double life?" Elliott ran a hand over his face. "It's complicated, Maren." "Enlighten me," I said, ice in my veins. "I'm fascinated to hear how you've justified this." He took a long swallow of wine, buying time. When he spoke, his voice had a rehearsed quality, as if he'd prepared for this moment. "I met Lydia in college. We were young, barely 20 when she got pregnant with Jackson. Her family is religious, traditional. There was never any question. We got married, bought the house, became a family. And then you decided one family wasn't enough?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "I was suffocating," he said, a flash of anger breaking through. "Every day the same routine, the same expectations. I took a business trip to Denver and it was like breathing for the first time. Then I met you, and you were everything Lydia wasn't. Independent, ambitious, not tied down by family obligations. Being with you felt like freedom, so you just— What? Decided to marry me too? Did you ever plan to tell either of us about the other?" Elliott leaned forward, suddenly earnest. "I love you, Maren. That part was never a lie." A harsh laugh escaped me. "Everything was a lie, Elliott. Everything. You constructed an entire false identity. Your parents as your alibi, business trips as cover stories. You've been lying to me since the moment we met. Not about how I feel about you. And how do you feel about Lydia? About your children? He flinched at that. That's different. That's obligation, responsibility. So she got the father of her children, and I got what? The fun version of you? The vacation from your real life? You're not being fair. Fair? My voice rose despite my determination to stay calm. You committed bigamy, Elliott. That's a felony in case you weren't aware. You married me while still legally married to someone else. You've been defrauding both of us financially. There is nothing fair about any of this. Elliott's facade cracked, panic seeping through. You can't tell her. Maren, please. It would destroy the kids. The kids you told me you didn't want yet, I said. The betrayal fresh all over again. Remember those conversations? Where you said you weren't ready for fatherhood? That was after Lily was born, wasn't it? He had no answer for that. How do you keep it all straight? I asked, genuinely curious despite myself. The lies, the stories, the excuses. Doesn't it exhaust you? Every day, he admitted, shoulders sagging. But I couldn't bear to lose either of you. To lose either life. Well, now you've lost both. His head snapped up. What do you mean? I slid another piece of paper across the table. My attorney's business card. I've filed for annulment. Our marriage was never legal. I've also prepared a statement for the district attorney. Bigamy, fraud, financial deception. I'm giving you one chance, Elliott. One chance to do the right thing. Which is what? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Tell Lydia yourself. Today. Then pack your things and get out of my apartment. I expect you gone by morning. And if I do this, you won't press charges. I studied the man I'd thought I knew, searching for a glimpse of the Elliott I'd fallen in love with. I found only a stranger calculating his odds, looking for an escape route. I won't, I said finally. But only because I don't want your children to see their father in handcuffs on the evening news. They've been betrayed enough. Elliott reached for my hand. I pulled away before he could touch me. Maren, please. We can work through this. I know I've hurt you, but what we have is real. Nothing about you is real, Elliott. Nothing. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded once, resigned. I'll tell her tonight. No more lies, I said firmly. And if I find out you haven't told her everything, all deals are off. I've documented everything. Hired a PI to verify the facts. There's no wiggle room here. Elliott stood, the weight of his deception visible in the slump of his shoulders. At the dining room doorway, he paused. For what it's worth, I never meant to hurt you. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the final time. That's the problem with lies, Elliott. The intent doesn't matter, only the damage they cause. 6 months later, I stood at the entrance to West Canton Memorial Park, a familiar knot forming in my stomach. The playground bustled with children, parents hovering nearby on benches with coffee cups and watchful eyes. I spotted her immediately. Lydia. She sat on a bench near the swings, dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, oversized sweater falling off one shoulder. Jackson pumped his legs on a swing while Lily toddled unsteadily toward the sandbox. Our eyes met across the playground. Recognition flickered in hers, not of me specifically, but of what I represented. Elliott had shown her my photo, told her everything, just as I'd demanded. I approached slowly, giving her time to object. She didn't. Maren, she said as I sat beside her, leaving appropriate space between us. Thank you for meeting me, I replied. We watched the children play in silence for a moment. How are they doing? I finally asked. Lydia sighed, a bone-deep exhale that spoke volumes. Jackson asks about him. Lily's too young to really understand. She just knows Daddy doesn't live with us anymore. A pang shot through my chest. And you? How are you doing? She turned to study me, really see me for the first time. The other woman. Except we'd both been the other woman, hadn't we? Some days are better than others, she admitted. The betrayal. It changes you. Makes you question everything. I know, I said softly. And I did. Elliott tells me you didn't press charges. I shook my head. That was never about punishing him. It was about forcing him to face what he'd done. I appreciate that, Lydia said. For the kids' sake. Have you... I hesitated, unsure if I had the right to ask. Have you filed for divorce? Yes, it's nearly finalized. She twisted the gold band still on her finger. Turns out our marriage was the legal one. Small comfort. I'm sorry, I offered, meaning it. For what? You didn't know either. Still, no one deserves this. Lydia's gaze drifted back to her children. The hardest part is knowing our entire relationship was built on deception. Even before you, the business trips, the late nights at the office, those were lies long before you came into the picture. I hadn't considered that. The thought that Elliott's pattern of deception predated me offered an odd, cold comfort. Have you heard from him? I asked. He sees the kids every other weekend. Supervised visits for now. Her voice hardened. Judge's orders after he tried to take them to Chicago without telling me. My stomach lurched. Chicago? He said he had job prospects there. I think he was running away. She gave me a sidelong glance. He's not living with you, is he? God, no, I said quickly. I haven't seen him since that night. A lie. I'd seen him once more a month after the confrontation. He'd shown up at my door, drunk and disheveled, begging for another chance. Claiming he'd ended things with Lydia, that he'd get help, that we could start fresh. I'd closed the door in his face. I sold the apartment, I told Lydia. Started over in a new neighborhood. New job, too. Smart, she nodded. I would have moved if not for the kids. Their schools, friends. She trailed off, watching as Jackson helped Lily fill a bucket with sand. They need stability now more than ever. I followed her gaze, watching these children who, in another reality, might have been my stepchildren. Who might have called me mom if Elliott's lies had ever given way to truth? Why did you want to meet? Lydia asked suddenly. After all this time? I'd asked myself the same question during the sleepless night before. The answer had come just before dawn, clear and certain. Closure, maybe. Or just to know I'm not alone in this. That someone else understands what it's like to love someone who never really existed. Lydia nodded slowly. He existed. He was just fragmented, pieces of himself scattered between lives. I don't think even he knew who he really was anymore. Do you hate me? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. She considered this, her expression thoughtful rather than angry. I did, at first. It was easier than hating him. But no, I don't hate you, Maren. We're both victims here. And survivors, I added. The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Yes, that too. Jackson ran over, breathless with excitement. Mom! Lily made a castle! Lydia brushed sand from his hands. That's wonderful, sweetie. We'll come see in a minute. He noticed me then, curious in the way only children can be. Who are you? Lydia and I exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between us. I'm Maren, I said simply. An old friend of your mom's. He accepted this without question and raced back to the sandbox. Thank you, Lydia said quietly. For what? For not being what I feared. For being human. It would have been easier to hate a monster. I understood. I'd spent months picturing Lydia as my enemy, only to find another woman as broken and betrayed as I was. What will you tell them when they're older? I asked, nodding toward the children. Lydia considered this. The truth, I suppose. Not all at once and not the ugliest parts, but enough so they understand that people are complicated, that love doesn't always protect you from pain. That's brave, I said. It's necessary. She stood, gathering her bag. I should get them home for lunch. I rose too, suddenly awkward. Of course. As she called to her children, Lydia turned back to me. Do you ever miss him? The him you thought you knew? The question caught me off guard with its honesty. Sometimes, I admitted. But then I remember that version of him never existed. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Take care of yourself, Maren. You too, Lydia. I watched as she gathered her children, Jackson chattering excitedly, Lily's small hand firmly in hers. A family reconfigured but intact. As they headed toward the park exit, Lydia glanced back once, raising her hand in a small wave that felt like both goodbye and permission to heal. to move forward, to forgive ourselves for loving a lie. I returned the gesture, feeling something tight and painful within me finally begin to loosen. The truth. I was learning. Didn't set you free immediately. Freedom came in small moments of release, in choices to move forward, rather than remain trapped in the past, in connections with others who understood your pain because they'd lived it too. I took one last look at the park where Elliott's two worlds had finally intersected, then turned away, walking toward the future he would never be part of. Some lies were too big to forgive, some truths too essential to ignore, but surviving them? That was a choice I made every day, and today, I chose to keep walking.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.